Oh,
We got almost to the end and I realized I had not hit record. It was
that's
horrible.
that's happened to me before too.
It happened with her and then another doctor, Ryan, Ryan somebody. And then we redid it and then I couldn't find the interview. I don't know what happened to it.
Worst.
I remember downloading it from Zoom. I don't have any idea what happened to it. So anyway, okay. All right, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and my special guest today is Meghann.Alice. And Meghann is a fellow meat-based friend that I have met on Instagram, and Meghann has a lot of really good things to say about food addiction and sugar addiction. And so I want to dive right into that today and talk about that because both of us agree that that is not talked about enough. So Meghann, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk about your story first because I think that's always intriguing and that's where people want to listen to. People want to hear what your story is, how you ended up switching your food to such a radical way of eating.
Yeah, so radical.
Yeah.
Okay, so my story is pretty lengthy, so I'm going to do my best to like simplify it. But really, it kind of all started at age 9. I was a very obsessive compulsive child. And my parents had me in and out of therapy. And so they thought they were doing the best for me. They just wanted the best for me, right? Nothing was helping. So they decided to put me on prescription pills at age 9. So when I was put on these medications, I blew up. Like I got so chubby. I was a chunky kid. I started to develop this literally undying appetite. Just not enough. There was never enough food. Like I just always wanted more. The amount of food I could eat until I felt full was, probably not normal. So I was also that kid in school that was friends with everybody, was, I'd like to say the life of the party. But at home behind closed doors, like I was a really dark kid, struggled with chronic anxiety and depression. The meds put me in such a place where I was a zombie all of the time. I was so like brain foggy. I could never focus. I always felt stupid. Academics were very challenging for me because my brain just wasn't working normally, but that was like the normal for me, right? So I would say age 16 came around and my self-esteem was terrible. You would never have known that though. But I was like, you know what? Well, if I don't have anything to offer the world because I didn't feel smart, I was like, well, maybe I could at least be pretty. So that's when I really got into fitness. And I became a fitness addict and just addicted to the gym, working out all the time. My relationship with food, I didn't look at it as disordered then, but I started kind of developing some bulimic behaviors. So like if I would go on these crazy binges, I would be purging in the gym for hours on end, spending hours in the gym. Occasionally I would make myself throw up. But I didn't in that moment, like I didn't think it was disordered at all.
Right.
So I was getting results. I was liking what I was seeing. I was like, okay. So let's fast forward to age 20. I was a party girl. My number one priority was having a good time. So young and dumb, I got pregnant at a very young age. Ended up being literally the biggest blessing. My daughter is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But during that time of pregnancy, I literally lived in my bedroom for 9 months, just in shame, embarrassed. And I ate myself sick. Like, so after I gave birth, I was 200 pounds. So, and I'm 5'3", like I'm not tall, like 200 pounds on my size body is a lot of weight. Yeah. So anyways, I knew that I needed to get that weight off immediately. So what did I do? I went back to the gym, was spending ridiculous amount of hours, working out, got the weight off, was purging as well. So yeah, so then, let's fast forward. So now I want to say like age 24 came around. I was nannying. I was trying to pay the bills. I'm a single mother, like just trying to support myself. I didn't have a college degree. Like I was at a place and I was like, you know what? I was sick and tired of being so sick and tired. My anxiety was terrible. I was still like a total zombie. My brain was just like all like, I never felt like I could function, I guess you could say, as a quote unquote normal person. Like I just knew something wasn't right. So now we're talking, I've been on prescription pills for 17 years now, right?
Wow.
For anxiety, depression, OCD, Adderall for ADD. Like I was on all of the meds. And my friend said to me, well, Meghann, these things could actually be really working against you and they're not good for you long term. And you should really try getting off of them. And I was like, holy cow, like you're out of your mind. Like I never like could have imagined getting off of them because I didn't know any different. I've been on them my entire life. But I was like, he said that to me and a light bulb went off. I ended up finding this book called Anatomy of an Epidemic. Found this book. It was just like, oh my gosh, like I have got to get off of these. Like this book basically said what these drugs do to you long term. And my whole life made entire sense. And I'm like, oh man, like I want to discover who Meghann is, like what is inside of her without being medicated. So I was so angry and so upset after reading this book. I cold turkeyed off of these. Okay. So for anyone who is listening to this, never, ever, ever, ever cold turkey. It is so dangerous. If I could go back in time and do things differently, I would have. I was in psychiatric drug withdrawal with 5 years and I get emotional talking about it because it was living hell. It was not fun. So anybody who ever wants to get off of prescription pills, you want to do a safe taper. Now, most doctors, we can save doctors for another topic, but most doctors do not know, they don't even know how to safely taper patients. And you can get really sick, really messed up for years at a time. So I have a great resource. Maybe you can link it at the bottom of the show notes, but it's called Inner Compass Initiative. It teaches teaches patients how to safely taper so they do not have to go through psychiatric drug withdrawal.
Okay.
So anyways, during that moment, I wanted, during those 5 years of psychiatric drug withdrawal, I was so frustrated and so angry with Big Pharma. And just, I felt like my life was just kind of like a scam. And I was so determined to do something with my life and make something of myself. So during that time, I pursued personal training. I became a certified trainer and I also pursued firefighting and became an advanced emergency medical technician. And during all of this, I achieved more than I had ever achieved in my life during this time. Now, we're still struggling with the food addiction during this time. And during getting off of psych meds, my food addiction and my eating disorder manifested, like got so bad. I was also in the health and fitness space preaching health and wellness. And here I am, a total fraud because I'm not healthy at all because I'm addicted to the gym. I'm purging through the gym and I'm also making myself sick, like terrible. So I actually hit a moment, rock bottom moment where I had gone on these, I had a day where I had a day of just constant binging and purging, binging and purging, binging and purging. And that night I was in the bathroom and I was just kind of standing and my whole world is just kind of, I'm like literally like just spinning. My heart is beating out of my chest. It's palpitating. And I had that aha moment, like right there. And just like this voice, and maybe it was God, but it was like, Meghann, if you do not get your, you know what, together, you're going to die. You're going to die. And my parents had been living in the ketogenic lifestyle for quite some time. My mom was doing it to improve her mental health. My father was doing it to reverse his type 2 diabetes. And he did. He got off of all of his medications, lost 100 pounds. And the funny thing is I actually used to make fun of them. Literally used to make fun of them and say, you guys are crazy. You need carbs to thrive. This is what you guys are doing is just silly. but I was so desperate, so desperate. They were like, well, Meghann, there's this, I forget, I want to say it was through Ketogenic Success, Mary Roberts and Jessica Reynolds. I took their food addiction course, and my parents were like, we'll pay for it for you. Just give it a try. And I was so desperate. Like, I was so sick. Like, I was thinking about enrolling myself in like a food addiction or an eating disorder clinic, because I just was so bad. And so I started this course, and all of the light bulbs once again went off. And I didn't even know that food addiction was really ever a thing, right? Like, because I was in the health and fitness space, I was also following all the, fitness gurus who were like, oh yeah, you don't want to live such a restrictive lifestyle because, you should be able to eat all of the things, moderation this, balance this. And I did it. I lived that for so many years, and it never worked. I would go, a couple months here, but every time I would fall flat on my face. The moderating just did not exist. So when I found out that food addiction was a thing, and because at the end of the day, you and I both know that addiction is addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or food. Every addiction should be treated like every addiction. Yeah, that course literally changed my life. And then, so I was doing really, really well. I was about 3 months food sober, right? And I had just started my new career in the fire service. Super excited. I had gotten through the psychiatric drug withdrawal. I was doing good with my eating disorder, my food addiction, and my bulimia. And then 2 months into my brand new career in the fire service, I fell backwards out of the ambulance, landed on my head, went unconscious, and suffered a traumatic brain injury. So lost my entire career. Within 2 months. I had worked my ass off so hard to get there. So here I am once again, my whole world has crumbled. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And as you know, if you've struggled with food addiction, like, typically in high stress times, we want to go back to what we used to do to soothe, right? And emotional eating is huge with many people. And that stressful moment, right? Like, I knew that I wanted to go back to old behaviors that were no longer serving me, because I wanted an outlet. Like, here I was, my world was crumbling. I don't drink alcohol. And I had nothing, but because I had learned so much about myself in the food addiction program, I was able to say, okay, your thoughts are going back to a really bad place. And I ended up hiring a one-on-one coach for food addiction before I went back to old behaviors and patterns, because I had worked so hard to be in that good place. I recognized I was in a bad place, so I saved myself before I went backwards. So I am a huge advocate for low carb, ketogenic, carnivore. It has literally changed my life. This is coming from somebody who is medicated for 17 plus years for all of the things, all of the problems, and I take nothing now. And what people don't understand is, not everybody, the impact that food has on your body. Do I think food alone can heal you? Not always, but in many cases, it can dramatically change your life. And, I work with one-on-one clients all the time who struggle with food addiction. And it's just, people need to understand the power of food, because you have so many people in the health and wellness space saying that there's no such thing as bad foods. And I'm here to say that is completely false, because food is information. So if you suffer with mental health and you're feeding your body, toxic seed oils and highly processed sugars, you are not doing anything for yourself. In fact, you're causing dysfunction, which is making things even worse. So huge advocate for the meat-based lifestyle.
I think one of the things that that people just don't realize, because they always say, and I'm sure you get this a lot, I do too, about why are you doing something so restrictive? It sounds to me like you have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that for a minute. The difference between the eating disorder that we had, because I had the same thing as you. I was bulimic for um, probably close to 20 years. When I was younger, I just turned 50, so I've not done that for quite some time, but I still did do the like the binging, and then I would starve myself for a week afterwards, or I would do a juice fast or all that. And all of those things are still related to each other. And so the idea that we eat such a restricted diet, but yet it keeps us clean and it keeps us sane. People just don't understand that.
Yeah. And I love when people say, that's so restrictive, right? And I always go back to this. What's restrictive is being a slave to food,
Yep.
being anxious, being depressed, that being sick, right? Just mentally and physically sick, that is restrictive, right? So if you find a way of eating that sets you free from that, that is not restrictive to me. And I like to say, everybody has can determine or define what it means to have food freedom, right? Like that could look different on everybody. Like they can have their own definition. But for me, my food freedom is choosing, right? Because I'm huge with words, right? So many people will say, I can't have this, I can't have that. Instead, let's start choosing words that are empowering us. Like I'm choosing to not eat foods that steal my peace, right? Like if something is stealing my peace and I'm hyper focusing about something and it's just taking so much space in my head, I don't want that in my life, not just with food, people, places, and things, being, being set free from sugar slavery or a high carb diet or bulimia or, anything that has been holding you back in life. If you have found that thing, whatever it is, that's freedom and not restriction.
Yeah, and for people to come down on us for our restriction, those same people, like if you sit down and you eat an entire bag of potato chips, or you
Mhm.
sit down and you eat an entire bag of Hershey's Kisses or something, you have a binge problem and you don't,
Problem.
yeah, and you don't realize it and you don't want to admit it.
Yes.
But the feeling that you feel after you do that, after you binge, and it is a binge, just to be
Yeah.
clear. I mean,
You're telling me you feel good after
right.
that?
You're telling me that you don't feel restricted after that? Like the way you feel like you're restricted mentally, you're restricted physically when you eat those kinds of things. And so for me, I feel the same way you do, that freedom that comes with and I don't know if it's not just having the smaller list of foods that gives me that freedom. There is something about the meat. There is
Mhm.
something about the nutrients, the bioavailable nutrients that we get from meat that changes us. Like it changed my personality.
Yeah. And it changes you from the inside out,
Yeah.
honestly. Like you have beautiful skin. I
Thanks.
think I have beautiful skin.
You do.
And I have literally had people ask me, what is your skincare regimen?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you really want to know? It's
It's the
it's
beef.
it's beef, water, and a washcloth.
That's what I always tell people. People will say, "Wow, you look really great." I'm like, "It's the beef. Thanks."
Yeah. Yeah. I always
Beef.
like to
I'm all
say,
about the beef.
yeah, body by beef.
Yeah.
But I also think too, it's like so many people want to lose weight, right?
Right.
They're chasing that number on the scale, and it's so important that you're chasing health and not the weight loss. And when you chase health and really focusing on nourishing your body and feeding it so it can live its most optimal life, um, you know, everything else follows. The weight loss follows. But yeah, I think too, oh, that's what I wanted to say. Back to the restriction thing. So you just said, when someone eats a bag of potato chips and they're saying, that they don't have an issue. And I literally just did a post the other day about being in denial, right? Because in an addict, somebody struggles with food addiction, wants to believe that they can moderate, that they can have all of the things like an alcoholic. Wouldn't he like to believe that he can just have one beer and be good
Yep.
with one beer? Of course. And I think food addiction is one of the hardest addictions to overcome because, like, literally every culture around the world, food is the center of everything everyone
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, I feel like a food addiction must be harder than being a cocaine addict or an alcoholic, and there will be people that are gonna argue this,
Well,
and I know that you
let
agree
me
with me.
interrupt. I
Yeah.
literally had a client who struggled with cocaine addiction,
Mhm.
and they told me that food addiction, that sugar addiction was way harder to overcome than the cocaine.
Yeah, and think about it, like, it is like, you're never gonna be at a restaurant, like, make plans, to go to a restaurant with friends, and somebody whips out some cocaine and uses it at the table in public, right? Or,
Right.
like, so you're not gonna be around cocaine all the time. If you chose to not be with the people that you did that with, and you chose not to be with the people that you were getting that from, you'd have a pretty, better success rate, right? It's the same way with alcohol. If you had this group of friends that you used to go out drinking with, you stop hanging out with those friends, you're going to do better in trying to stop drinking. You
Yeah.
can't really do that with food. Like,
Right.
food is a necessary thing, and it doesn't have to be a necessary evil. And I think to so many of us, it was a necessary evil for so long that for me, the idea, like, I used to take my dieting history is so much like yours, but I used to take like smart ones, the Weight Watchers smart ones meals, the frozen meals. I used to take those to Christmas dinner so that
Wow.
I would eat that instead of enjoying the food, right? Now I go and I bring like a standing rib roast that I know I can eat. I bring a meat and cheese casserole, and on occasion I'll make a cheesecake that's just lightly sweetened with stevia or something, and I'll have that. Like, I can go and enjoy the foods that I love and not feel bad at all that everybody else is being so gluttonous and eating. Like, we leave there and I feel really good. I feel like I do all the time because I'm eating the same foods I always eat, but everybody else is like in this coma, and they wake up the next day feeling miserable, and I wake up feeling good. Except I did backslide at Christmas this year. Gave myself some leeway for one meal, ended up being a 5-day miserable thing. I was amazed that I was able to stop it at 5 days, because in the past it would have gone on a lot longer than that. But I know how other people feel now. I remember how other people feel now the day
Yeah.
after Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when you just feel like total and complete garbage because you ate so much junk, right? Everybody
Mm.
gains 10 pounds throughout the holidays. It doesn't have to be like that.
No,
I think that food freedom thing is just really misunderstood.
it really,
And
really is.
then you mentioned a few minutes ago about moderation. So let's talk about that for a minute. The moderator versus abstainer thing. So a moderator can have one Oreo cookie. I've never been a moderator. I've never eaten one
Can
Oreo.
you please explain to me how you do that? Because,
One?
yeah.
Never. Like, literally, I've been gluten-free for probably 12 years. And anytime I ever bought like those gluten-free Oreos, or the off-brand or whatever, whoever makes the gluten-free ones before Oreo did, I had to buy 2 packs because I knew one was mine.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's how bad it was. It was
Yeah.
always like that. So I've never been a moderator ever. So people who say moderation is key, everything in moderation, that doesn't work for people who are abstainers. And an abstainer is somebody who can't just have one. So when they say on what is it, the Pringles, or is it Lay's potato chips, that says you can't have just
Yeah.
one of those two, they're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have that bliss point in there. The
Well,
bliss point,
those the Oreo cookies, anything from
yeah,
General Mills
yes,
and big food, literally they're engineered
yes,
to be addictive,
yes.
like 100%.
That's right. And you should feel duped. Like, as a consumer, you
Yes.
should, yeah, you should feel like you've been
They're
tricked.
hijacking you.
They are. They have the exact right amount. They know, they have scientists that do this, that figure out the bliss point, and that's what they call it. They are
And
sitting
you know
around
what?
laughing about the bliss point.
I don't I don't want to take any part in that. So I can
Yes,
literally tell you that is not restrictive. I don't want to be part of their head
that's
game.
exactly right.
I'm good.
They know you're addicted, and they specifically make it addictive with the exact right amount of salt, sugar, and fat to
Mhm.
make those things addictive. And as a consumer, you should feel mad about that. The people who used to run like the tobacco companies who got people addicted to tobacco are now running the processed food companies, and they knew what to do. They knew how to get you, and they have scientists that know that you're addicted.
Big food, big pharma. Guess what, guys? It's all intertwined. Be a
Is.
slave to their foods, get sick, and now you're going to be a slave to big pharma and their meds. Like, it is not a place that you want to be in.
Yeah.
I know, like, I do. And that's what I tell when people come to me for food addiction. I'm like, all right, guys, like, let's change our perspective when it
Yeah.
comes to food. That SHIT, it's poison. It's
Mhm.
toxic. It's legit like heroin. And do you want to be a slave to that for the rest of your life? Like, no, liberate yourself and say, no, I'm good. I don't want to be part of that rodeo.
But the nutritional guidelines for America say that it's fine if I eat those things.
Yeah.
So conflicts of interest.
Yep.
There
And I always like to say, I mean, we don't need to get into politics. We don't need to go down that route.
It's
But
okay, let's just a little bit.
okay, if you're do the complete opposite of what your government tells you and you'll be
Seriously.
healthy.
Yeah, seriously, the conflicts of interest on the US Dietary Guidelines Committee, the people that decide on the food pyramid that and this let's just be clear, um, because people will say, "Well, I don't follow the food pyramid anyway, you know, I just eat lots of carbs or whatever, lean protein." But most people do either work or have their kids go to or live in a place where those dietary guidelines, it's mandatory. It's a law that they be followed. So schools, nursing homes, hospitals, the
Hospitals.
US
Oh.
military, all of those places have to follow those guidelines.
Mhm.
And you can honestly say, if you sit back, even as an impartial person, there's no way even an impartial person could sit back and watch what is served to like a diabetic patient in a hospital and
Mhm.
say, oh, that's a good meal for them. We'll just give them more insulin for it, is what the doctors and the nurses say when they serve a diabetic patient orange juice and a
A
muffin
muffin.
and bread with jam. Like there is, and then one egg, like like, as if that's going to
Like,
offset.
they
Like,
are in there because they are sick,
right.
and you're making them sicker.
Yeah, and it's not even like the muffin is homemade either. These are all processed foods. The orange juice, the muffin, the toast, and the jelly or the jam, they are all processed foods. The egg is the only thing on the plate, if it's a real egg, that is not processed. And so I just think it's so important that people understand the dietary guidelines and how they affect our lives because people will shrug their shoulders and say, well, that doesn't really affect me. It does if you have kids in school. It does if you ever end up in the hospital. It does if you're in the military. All those places, it is mandatory. It's actually illegal to serve whole milk in schools. They are
It's
not
crazy.
allowed to serve it.
I just got done another food addiction certification, and in the program that I took, they said that if we keep moving at this rate by 2050, which is
Soon.
not too far away,
Yeah.
1 in 3 people will have diabetes. Like, it's outrageous. Like, that makes me so sad.
Yeah. And again, I think people need to look at those guidelines and people need to use common sense, I guess, is the main thing because if I can eat a steak with some butter and it doesn't raise my glucose level to a point that is unhealthy, if it doesn't affect me in that way, how could it possibly lead to diabetes for people? Because that's what they want us to believe. That's what they say. They have studies that say that, but it's really important that when you see a study, don't just believe the headline. Actually go to the sources on the study. And I know that's asking a lot of people, but if you want to know the truth, go to the sources on the study because the source on the study is going to take you the source on the article is going to take you to the actual study. And if you really dive in, you're going to find that most of the studies that say a steak causes diabetes or, the US dietary guidelines, are correct, or when you go in and you look at those studies and you see the sources for them and you look for the funding, that's where the truth really shines, is
Yeah, like,
because
if you go to Google and you type in a keto diet, probably the first or second link's going to tell you you're going to die.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And if you go to the study that says that, you're going to find that study was probably paid for by Kellogg's or Coca-Cola. And
Or
people don't,
PepsiCo.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
shocked when I found this out. Like, and it's something like in 80% of the cases or something like that, the study is um is skewed towards the person who like the results of the study are skewed towards the company or the person who funded it. So you're never going to find a study that is paid for or funded by Coca-Cola that says sugar is bad for you.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when I found those things out. that those studies are actually paid for by some of the companies that the study ends up finding favor in. And that makes perfect sense, right? There
Well,
has to
money.
be a point, there has to be a way that we can get to a point where these studies are actually funded by somebody who is impartial. And I don't know who that would be, but there has to be a way to get real studies so that the human race can survive, because the way things are going, I mean, the amount of people that are sick is just, it's so sad, and it makes me sad on a daily basis to watch the way people eat.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I think we're up against a giant.
Yep.
And I think all we can do, it's gonna be like one person at a time, little by little. And hopefully things change. I'm not hopeless,
Right.
but I think it's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, what's the number one book you would recommend to people who, like, need information?
Yeah, honestly, The Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Barry,
Mhm.
literally one of my favorite, that was one of my first books, when I started this lifestyle,
Mhm.
and he does such a beautiful job of breaking it down, into, like, terms that everyone can understand. It covers, salt and cholesterol and the sun, and how none of those things are actually going to kill us. Or so yeah, no, definitely The Lies My Doctor Told Me, super easy read. If you're not a huge reader, I'm pretty sure he has it on Audible, but
Yeah.
definitely suggest that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say mine. Mine would be, The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz. That book is amazing. If you wonder why we're afraid of fat, or if you're afraid of fat and wonder how we got into this predicament, that is an awesome book. It is on Audible. I've actually listened to it 5 times.
I
And
have it on book. The print is so tiny. I
yeah,
gotta get the Audible.
yeah, it's wonderful. It is such a good book, to teach you how we got to where we are, and I think that one's really helpful
It
too.
all started with a rat study with, like, Ansel
Ansel
Keys, right?
Keys,
Yeah.
man, Ansel Keys is the
He
reason
screwed it
people are
up
so
for
sick.
everybody.
I know, seriously, like, if I think, that is one of the biggest issues that Americans, and not just Americans either, because it's trickled into other countries too, but it started in America. The whole thing with Ansel Keys, look that up. It's mind-blowing, but definitely read those 2 books. I mean, those are awesome books if you're thinking about getting started. So, one more thing is you are going to Hack Your Health, formerly known as KetoCon, and that's super exciting. You get to be on a food addiction panel.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
excited.
I'm really excited. Honestly, like, it sounds cheesy, but it's kind of like a dream come true, because I
Yeah.
remember being so sick with food addiction and my bulimia. And I remember I used to literally, after every binge, I would, like, curl up in a ball, like, sick every night, and just think to myself, if I can ever overcome this addiction, like, I'm going to make it my mission to help others do the same. And I'm going to get so vocal about it and just do whatever I can.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to be on the food addiction panel at Hack Your Health. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. So where can people find you?
So I am most active on Instagram at Meghann.Alice, Meghann.Alice. I'm super active on there. So if you have any questions, just shoot me a message.
That's awesome. This was a wonderful conversation. We'll have to do it again.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Megan. It was great. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Carnivore Revolution.
Oh, that was really good.
Really good.